Hi, I'm Rich Weidel, the CEO at Princeton Mortgage, here to talk about the Princeton Producers Program, which is our sales training program designed to help people transition from operations into being a wholesale account executive. Josh Teti was one of our accidental first people that really helped us to build this program. He worked with us for several years in operations and then transitioned as a wholesale account executive. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Josh's experience, a little bit of the story behind that, so that people who are considering this program can understand what it's like when you're actually going through it. So Josh, welcome, and thanks so much for meeting with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Cool. So Josh, I'd like to start off with, I remember, I guess it was in 18 and 19, you were on the operations team here working primarily in processing.
Yeah, I was. And even going back further, my entire history within this industry has been in operations. Yeah, so I had an opportunity to, like you said, back in 17 and 18, work in our processing department as a processing manager. That was pretty much brand new for me, that specific role and that specific position. But what it did is it taught me, it almost forced me to learn the ins and outs of underwriting and conditions and how to read guidelines and things like that, which have branched into a big part of my success through this program, being in the role that I am in right now.
So Josh, I think it was like the end of 2019 when you started to really raise your hand up and say you wanted to transition into sales, and you started, right at the beginning of 2020. What was going on in your head with your career that prompted you to switch from operations into being a wholesale account executive?
Yeah, so let's just, the elephant in the room when we're having this conversation is, going from an operations role where, it's salary, it's comfortable. You don't have to worry about any type of different pay structure or anything like that. And then switching over to a sales role where it's all commissions, right? So that's very, very scary. But what I was thinking towards the end of 2019 is that what's next for me? I had been, like I just mentioned, in an operations role pretty much my entire career, and I had been very successful. I've held leadership positions within that. But there was always this other side of me of like, well, am I limiting myself? Do I want to take that risk? Do I want to push myself even further? Because you can only really push yourself so far within those specific roles. But when it's just you and, you eat what you kill type of mentality within the sales role, that scares a lot of people, and it's not for everyone, and it is very risky. But to me, it was like, what could really go wrong, right? It's, worst case scenario, I wasn't going to be successful at it, and then I would just, I had enough experience to kind of fall back into another operations role. But I didn't even have that mindset. It was like, I'm going to be successful. I'm going to make the leap. It's going to be tough. I already understood that, right? It's going to be risky. It's not always going to be rainbows and butterflies. And I just went for it. And I think that's what a lot of people, me specifically as well, it's scary. It's risky. Leaving your comfortable couch and kind of going out into the world to, in a sales position where, like I said, it's just you, right? Your pipeline is your pipeline, and, you can earn as much as you want to earn, or you don't earn as, you know what I mean? So it's just a different mindset that you kind of have to switch. And for me, it was a no-brainer. It took me a little while to actually make that decision, but it was always in the back of my head. So it just got to the point where I said, let's do it. Let's rock and roll.
So you brought up earnings, and I think that's probably for a lot of people, I would imagine, operations roles, salaries have more safety, but limited upside comparatively. So if you're willing, how much did you make in your first year as an account executive?
It was life-changing money for me. I made $300,000 in my first full year as an account executive. And looking back at it, in my head, I always had this idea of like, different tiers of pay, right? So I want to get to 100,000. I want to get to 150. I want to get to 200. Well, I went from 75 to 300 in the matter of 1 year. So, I'm extremely humbled by it. I had a lot of people to help me along the way, but I mean, my story and that number in my 2020 just goes to show you really have endless earning potential, right? I mean, and that's what you get with this role, right? You don't have a ceiling. You really could just go out. And that's what I did. I went out and I said, listen, it's going to be tough, but I'm going to work extremely hard, work long nights, work weekends, whatever it takes, because I want to get to that next level. And it worked, and it could work for anyone else with that mentality.
Now, you went backwards in pay for a little bit when you did transition. How long was the period, the startup period from when you kind of went from operations into wholesale account executive until you saw how long did your earnings go down, and when did you start to pick back up?
Yeah. So starting like January 1st, or I guess 2nd, 2020, it was like cold turkey. I went from like a salary position to I'm straight commission, and that's it. Right. So, and at that point, right, in a sales role, you don't have a pipeline right there. So like you get paid off of loans that you close. Well, I didn't have any loans. So, and I knew that going into it, I knew it was going to be tough. It took me about 3 months to really build up my pipeline, build up my broker relationships, and get that pipeline churning. And those 3 months were hard. Like I'm not gonna beat around the bush about that. It was really, really difficult. There were times when you just think to yourself, like, was this the right move? Right? 1 month down, 2 months down, you're like, oh man, okay. But I just dug in, right? I spent those 3 months. This is what I tell everyone, how quick did it, take you to get, up and running? Like, what did you do during that time? I spent those 3 months constantly on the phone, constantly calling brokers, constantly following up, constantly emailing, just prospecting 24/7 as much as I possibly could. And what that did is that built the foundation. Those 3 months, I attribute my success to those 3 months because it really built the foundation. And I put in all that hard work to where everything just started to, happen throughout the rest of the year. So, and everyone's different, right? So, people might take longer, people might take shorter. But from my experience, having gone through it, I would say 3 months is probably a good time period to kind of look at and say, all right, it's going to take 3 months. It's going to take 90 days to actually get my pipeline up and running. It's going to be great after those 3 months, but you just kind of got to dig in and grind.
Yeah. And so for any candidates that are listening to this, this interview is designed for people that are considering the program. When Josh did it, the program was an idea.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, Josh, let's give it a shot. And I think one of the ways that the mortgage industry struggles is that they generally rely on recruiting experienced salespeople. And at Princeton, we want to build salespeople. We want to have a predictable success model where we're helping people get going. And so we found in the wholesale business, if you have somebody that has no mortgage experience, it's really tough because you can't deliver value. But if somebody like Josh, who's got a decade of mortgage experience, he was able to get in really quickly. And so, Josh, what do you think about the design of the program now, where people will join, they'll spend ideally 3 months doing nothing but prospecting to get new brokers to sign up with Princeton Mortgage. So what they're doing is working the phones all day, working on marketing leads to introduce brokers to our account executives. Once they get a certain number of new brokers signed up, then they can transition into starting to build their own book of business. And we think that's it should take about 3 months. It could take as long as 6 months. If somebody hasn't achieved that within 6 months, then this is not the right fit for them. What do you think about the design of the program based on your own experience?
Yeah. So, I mean, to your point, we didn't have this design when I started. It was just like, all right, let's see how it works out. But I think what it did is it naturally formed this type of structure. I think the design is great. So when you're recruiting, and I know you mentioned about, bringing someone fresh with no mortgage experience in here, that is really, really difficult. And we found through doing that it's not that successful because you can't train mortgage experience. It's just, you just have it, right? You have it throughout years, throughout different roles but what we can train is, to your point, the whole sales side of it, right? So we can train, and we built the Princeton selling system. We built so many things to support our salespeople, where if you have that mortgage experience, you can come in here, you already know what you need to know. You just have to do the sales side of it. So the structure is great. And to your point, how it's going to play out is that, okay, you're prospecting, calling new brokers, getting them to sign up. You're gaining that experience, while on the other end of it, you're building your book of business. You're building those relationships. You're naturally building your own pipeline, which is what I did for the first 3 months. A little bit different, but I mean, it's the same idea. Yeah.
So in my experience, the era of the hard sale is over. Yeah. And what people want is to be, people hate to be sold, but they love to buy. And really, I think that the best salespeople are those that provide real value. Yep. I'm wondering if you could share a couple of thoughts on how did your mortgage experience and knowledge help you to perform so well in your first year? Where's the value in that? How does that play out in your relationship with your brokers?
Yeah, I mean, it's everything. We always throw this term around about being a trusted advisor, to your broker partners. And what does that really mean? It means that anytime a broker calls me with a question or anything like that, my first instinct is not to say, oh, well, how, do you have loans that you can send? Or, how are things out there? Like, let's build back up your pipeline. I don't even think about that. When I answer the phone call or answer emails, it's all about how I can actually deliver value to this other broker. Now, having that my experience in multiple, different operations roles and things like that, the biggest thing, I'm on the phone with a broker, they're asking me a question. More often than not, I don't have to say, well, hold on, I don't know that answer, I'll get back to you later. It's almost like an immediate answer because I just have that knowledge and have that experience in my head. Underwriting scenarios, that's a big thing right now. We're getting a ton of scenarios. I can answer a lot of underwriting scenarios on the phone right there with the broker where I don't even have to reach out to our underwriting team. So I think that's the value. It's the speed of getting answers, and it's just developing that overall relationship. You know what I mean? So what I tell, if we're just talking about prospecting and someone's calling a broker for the first time, if you have the idea that your end goal is to get this broker to sign up with you and to start doing business with you, you're doing it all wrong. You should not have that end goal. You should not be tied to the end goal. You should be tied to the process, and the process is developing that relationship to become that trusted advisor. And it's everything to me. It's I get more satisfaction not from closing loans, but actually helping brokers. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times brokers actually call me for questions about loans that they have with some other lender. Like, hey, Josh, what do you think about this condition? Like, what would you do? And that just tells me that they trust me. Obviously, I would love every single loan to come, but again, that's not the end result for me. It's developing that long-term relationship.
So Josh, thank you for sharing that. It's awesome. Could you walk us through a little bit? What's your day-to-day like? Particularly, like, how is your day as an account executive different than your day as when you were working in processing, or are they more similar than that? What are the major differences in that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think there are a lot of parallels and similarities. We're talking a lot about building a pipeline, right? Now, whether that's a pipeline of loans or a pipeline of brokers, that pipeline mentality and like pushing things through the pipeline, it's the same here as it was in any operations role, right? So when I was a processor, I had a pipeline of loans that I had to process and that I was assigned to. So like that aspect is very, very similar. Now, the idea of like a 9-to-5 job, you come in, you kind of do a set task and then you leave. Like that's kind of all out the door here, right? Our main goal here, and my main goal, is to consistently grow this department, to grow my own book of business, and to develop relationships. And you do that just through calling brokers, through connecting with brokers, through helping them through difficult situations. Obviously, a lot of my time is spent reaching out to brokers, trying to get them signed up, trying to see what, being that trusted advisor that we just talked about. But also a part of it is spent in the pipeline, helping where, and I think that's what I bring, and that's what someone in this role can bring, having that experience, is that you're not just a salesperson and you're not just completely disconnected from your pipeline or anything like that. You're actually it's like a hybrid role. And I think I've been very successful having maintained the pipeline in the past and having to push loans through in the past, where that just comes second nature to me. So, day to day, everything's different. Every single day is different. It depends on the time of month. It depends on the time of day and things like that. But my main focus every single day when I wake up and I kind of log in is like, how can I help my brokers? How can I deliver value? How can I help them grow their business? And that's where I start. And I just kind of backfill with everything throughout the day. So
do you have any regrets from transitioning from operations to sales?
I do. My one regret is that I didn't do it earlier. Honestly, and it's that would really be my only regret. It hasn't been easy. It's been very, very difficult times, specifically last year, just due to COVID and things like that. Really tough conversations I've had to have with brokers that no longer send business for whatever reason. Like that's all tough, and that's all part of the job. But no regrets at all.
It's the in sales, you have full responsibility.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's why there's the upside of it, but with that comes the burden of that responsibility, for sure.
Yeah, and that's and that scares a lot of people, having that responsibility and having that burden. But to me, it's like I would much rather just be, if I'm the one responsible, good or bad, and I don't have to like point fingers or like take blame for things that I'm not doing. I would much rather be that. So yeah, no regrets at all. Only regret is that I didn't commit to doing this earlier.
Hey, Josh, thank you so much for sharing your story, and for any candidates watching this that are considering it. I hope this helped to give you a little bit of a flavor of what the program's like, what's possible, and to learn from somebody that made that transition. So Josh, congratulations on a great first year, and thanks for spending your time with me today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it, Rich.